10 Smallest V-twin engine motorcycles beginners will enjoy. The beginner V-twin motorcycle is a dying breed, so we list 10 of the best ones you can choose as a beginner motorcyclist. The V-twin engine configuration is one of the most recognizable for motorcycles, and the idling, potato, sound of a long stroke, high-torque V-twin has been the soundtrack of the American motorcycling landscape for over a century. It is understandable if, as a beginner, you want to skip the single-cylinder motorcycles and get to the good stuff instantly. After all, a V-twin engine will give you better torque spread, sound better, will be smoother in most cases, you won't tire of its power as easily as you would with a single, and learning to set off from a standing start will be much easier with a twin. Number 10, Yamaha V-Star 250. If you're a beginner but don't want a single, the Yamaha V-Star 250 should be at the top of your list. It is a dinky 249cc cruiser that weighs a mere 324 pounds and the seat height is a low 27 inches. It has an air-cooled, carbureted engine, so if you're also looking to learn how to work on your first motorcycle, it doesn't get much simpler than that. A 5-speed transmission and chain drive complete the driveline. Braking is taken care of with a disc at the front and a drum at the rear, and the twin rear shock absorbers are adjustable for preload. That's the only suspension adjustment on offer. The all-analog instrumentation includes a speedometer, an odometer, and a trip meter. The fact that it is a cruiser means that it is stable and learning to steer will be easier. This is one of our favorite beginner motorcycles, V-twin or not. Number 9, HD Street 500. The Street 500 and 750 were conceived and developed to cater to a global audience, especially in Southeast Asia, where motorcycles like these are considered premium motorcycles. They needed to be accessible to populations where the average height is a lot less than we're used to in the USA or most of Europe, and that means that the Street 500 is light, the seat height is low, and the power band is accessible. That is proven by the peak torque being achieved at a low 3,500 rpm, and peak power is manageable at just over 33 horsepower. The gearbox is a 6-speeder that drives the rear wheel via Harley's traditional belt drive, eliminating the headache of chain maintenance for a beginner. Couple all of this with a low seat height, decent curb weight, and great ground clearance that means it will never ground on a hump, and you've got yourself a great beginner motorcycle. Number 8, Suzuki V-Strom 650. Pretty much everyone will tell you to stay away from an adventure touring motorcycle as a beginner, because they're tall, and usually heavy, because their chassis has to be built to carry the rider, a pillion, and luggage. This is good advice, but if you are bullheaded and still want to learn on a V-twin ADV, the V-Strom 650 would be our pick. If you look carefully, its curb weight isn't all that much compared to some of the other vehicles here, and the seat height is within an inch of the two street bikes in this article, so it isn't as intimidating as you'd expect it to be. Plus, you get a decent suite of electronics and the freedom to explore off the beaten path as well. Number 7, Moto Guzzi V7. If you prefer your beginner motorcycle as a street bike rather than a cruiser, here's a quirky choice for you, the Moto Guzzi V7. It has a longitudinal 90-degree V-twin engine, and since the cylinders stick out to the sides, they take advantage of their positioning and use air to cool themselves. And since the engine is mounted longitudinally, Moto Guzzi uses a shaft to send power to the rear wheel. The V7 weighs a significant amount less than some of the cruisers on here, but it trades in that usability with a higher seat height. There's also the question of the smaller numbers and support network for a brand such as Moto Guzzi, and the fact that it is European means that it is slightly behind the curve in terms of maintenance costs. Number 6, Honda Shadow. The Shadow has been a Honda brand since 1983, and has had many displacements. The relevant one here is the 745cc Shadow with the liquid-cooled V-twin engine. It sports 3 valves per cylinder, 2 for the intake, and Honda's acclaimed PGM-FI fuel injection to put out 45 horsepower and 47.9 lb-ft of torque. The torque peak is at a low 3,500 rpm, which means not only will it be fuel efficient, but you also won't have to shift through its 5-speed gearbox much. Added to its fuss-free nature is the shaft drive, which requires no maintenance other than an oil change at regular intervals. Instrumentation consists of an analog tank-mounted speedo, and a digital odometer trip meter clock that can display one field at a time. Number 5, Suzuki Boulevard C50T. The Boulevard is usually known for the big, 1800cc model, but the C50T is the smaller sibling with a mid-sized 805cc 50 cubic inch V-twin that has a fantastically flexible torque band. Nearly 3000 RPM separates the torque peak from the power peak. This bodes well for a beginner because you won't have to do a lot of shifting. The shaft drive also reduces maintenance, and it looks like a lovely vintage cruiser, complete with chrome, wire spoke wheels, and a hardtail look. However, we aren't too sure about that rear drum brake and its ability to contribute towards stopping the 611-pound curb weight of the Boulevard C50T, but all else points to this being a wise choice for a beginner. Number 4, Kawasaki Vulcan 900 Classic. The Vulcan is one of the real heavyweights here. The seat height might be really low, but at 620 lbs it isn't for the weak-kneed among us. It makes a relatively lazy 50 horsepower from 903cc, and torque peaks at a really low 3,500 rpm. We love its vintage hardtail looks, replete with spoked rims and whitewall tires. If you want a classic or vintage-looking motorcycle and have the hours in the gym to handle the Vulcan's curb weight, we can't think of many motorcycles that you'll enjoy for a long time, not just because of the torque-laden engine, but for its reliability. Plus, you can't deny the cool factor of telling your friends that you are riding something named after the god of fire and volcanoes, not to mention all the Trekkies that will instantly high-five you with the Vulcan salute. Number 3, Ducati Monster. The current generation of the Ducati Monster was launched 2 years ago, and the focus was on reducing weight and offering better torque delivery for city riding from the engine, both parameters which also coincidentally will help a beginner get confidence quickly. The Monster looks aggressive, but the seating position is actually quite comfortable, and the seat height can be dropped from over 32 inches to 30.5 inches with an accessory low seat and suspension kit. Since it is a Ducati, you can expect the full suite of electronics to help you keep the rubber side down, also music to the ears of a beginner. You can dial the electronic nannies back as you gain experience and confidence. Of course, being a Ducati, it probably won't be cheap to maintain over a long period of time, but heck, you only live once. Number 2, Harley-Davidson Nightster. The Nightster is a strange breed of motorcycle that looks like a cruiser at first glance, but when you go through the spec sheet, it gets quite confusing. The engine is a stressed member of the frame, the liquid-cooled engine is a high-revving gem, and the seat height is higher than almost all the other cruisers here. The Nightster then is part street bike, part cruiser, and we love it. It will offer the stability of a cruiser with the fun of a street bike's power delivery, and you'll own a piece of American iron that belongs to this millennium with modern tech and conveniences. The weight is quite good for what it is, and you won't get bored with it once you get beyond beginner levels of riding competence. Number 1, Indian Scout 60. Yes, we know that it's a whole 1000cc we're talking about here, and the max power and torque figures creep up into intermediate rider levels. However, you'll also notice that they're formed quite high up in the rev range, as would befit a short-stroke engine with 4 valves per cylinder. That means that down low in the rev range it is quite manageable, and with the low seat height and great mass centralization, it is quite easy to ride if you remember to keep it in the lower reaches of the rev range. The large engine means that freeway jaunts are going to be relaxed, especially given the Scout 60's 6-speed gearbox. It stays true to the cruiser aesthetic with an analog speedometer, and digital readouts for everything else. We can safely say that you won't get bored with the Scout 60 as a beginner. There is enough performance here to satisfy most motorcyclists as long as you respect the right grip during your learning stages. Plus, this is a true slice of Americana. I hope you enjoy watching. Thank you. Please subscribe to my channel, TNL Rob Vlog.